And over to Rabbi Wilkinson. Okay. There we go.
Good morning, recording in progress. Yes. I want to thank Rabbi Jackson for inviting me and for arranging this as always. I'm beginning to feel increasingly at home in this shul because people are coming up to me and saying, really sorry, I can't stay for the shir because I've got to go off. So it makes me feel I'm in my own shul. That's what I often hear. So it's comfortable to do that. First of all, I owe an apology for a mistake that I made. Stephen actually booked me for last week. And I must admit that I completely and utterly forgotten. For some reason, I didn't write it down in my diary. And I booked a flight to go to Sweden last Tuesday to see my wife's great aunt, because unfortunately she just lost her husband, my wife's great uncle. And I was going to go from 10th to the 11th. And I'd completely and utterly forgotten my booking here until Stephen, Minishamayim, this shows how things operate, sent me a message, and he's laughing. He doesn't even know the story. He's laughing. He suddenly wrote me a message and said, I'm really sorry, we've got to change your date to the 17th of March. And so I was suddenly thinking, like, I'd completely and utterly forgotten I put booking in. I've got myself another booking to go to Sweden. So it's for sure that I'm obviously here today. And I thank you you didn't know how nice it was for me.
Thank the speaker who spoke last week for wanting to speak last week.
So it's absolutely wonderful the way it worked out. The other thing I was going to speak about Vayikra, because I think Vayikra is an important message in the whole idea of Kavanot and making our connection with Hashem. Until one of my grandsons said to me the other day that he's giving a shir at Menorah. 15 minutes he has to speak on a particular aspect of the Haggadah. And he was asking me, can he borrow some of my Haggadah? Because he knows that I've got a very large collection things to look at. And I was trying to go through which ones would be appropriate for him. So I thought things like Rav Twersky would be appropriate for him. Rav Tam would be appropriate for him. Not Rav Kook. Obviously, Menorah wouldn't want to have Rav Kook. They wouldn't want to have the modern Orthodox one. So I was finding that. But of course, I took something off the bookshelf and I started looking at it. I thought, you know what? I have to talk about Seder, because although we argue about talking about it from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we argue whether it's a month before we should talk about Pesach. But I believe that Seder is such an important night, such an important opportunity, that we really need to spend a little bit longer thinking about it and preparing for it. So I may not even give you any answers today, and I'm not going to tread into any form of halachot, because that's Rabbi Lister. It's his responsibility in this shul. But I think there are some things we can think about for Seder, to prepare for Seder. And I think any time we spend on that is time really well spent. I also think that we have to be very grateful that here we get 2 nights of Seder. You know, as a child, I always thought, like, why on earth are we having 2 nights? We're doing the same again. It's too much. But I've learned, certainly in more recent years, that it's actually an incredible opportunity. And I don't know how they manage in Israel without having a second Seder. I really don't, because there is so much to say, there's so much to talk about. So let's just try and think through some of the ideas and maybe make our Seder a little bit different this year. And I don't want to tread on Rabbi's toes, because I know he's doing a Seder in the shul. But Seder is a time when we ask questions. Seder is a time when we think of allowing the children to say what they want to say, rather than thinking about ourselves. And I think there are some messages there for us that we can take away. And Seder should have, the whole of Pesach should have an influence on us going forward for the whole year. There are messages there that are really to be explored. Just starting about the way we set the Seder plate. And if you look in most gutters, you'll actually see that there are different ideas, 3 or 4 different concepts about how we lay out the food on the Seder plate. And there's an idea from the Arizal, the Kabbalistic ideas, that says that we support the foods in a particular order by having certain messages. We have a cover over the plate, or some people have it over their plate, some people have it over their matzah. Why? Well, have we ever thought about that? Why we do it? Well, one of the ideas is that it's a cover to remind us of Hashem being above us. Part of the reason why we actually cover our heads, we don't often think about, why do we do this? We're so used to doing things because we've done it before, we've done it for generations, we're told to do it. We don't always think about it. But I think it's a time and opportunity for us to think about it. We place the zerah, the shank bone. Some people say you place it on the right side of the plate. Why? Because it represents the idea of chesed. Chesed with Abraham. And Hashem reaches out his right hand to hug us and bestow good upon the world, as he did when he took us out from Egypt. For many people, they put the Beitzah, the egg, on the left-hand side. Why? Because it actually corresponds, or it's meant to correspond to the idea of gevura, of holding back, like Yitzhak, who held back his natural desire for life when he's called upon to allow himself to be offered on the Mizbeach. Now, I want to also share a thought on this, and the whole idea of the connection with the egg. And of course, many people who do eat eggs may eat an egg at the beginning of the Seder. And the idea, again, we talk about eggs being associated with mourning. It's the first food that are traditionally given to Avadim, to mourners after a Levaya. We also have it as our last meal before Tisha B'Av, for those who eat eggs. So we associate an egg with mourning. And the first day of Pesach, as we know, always falls on the same day of the week as Tisha B'Av. So while we celebrate our redemption on Pesach, we feel it remains incomplete. We can't completely give ourselves over to celebration until we have the final redemption. But the Ishbitzer Rebbe says another interesting idea again. He says that if we think about it, an egg represents the last stage before birth, because it represents a baby chicken, a baby chick that didn't materialize. What's the connection? Why are we thinking about this? The Ishbitzer says that at the very moment we reenact our liberation from Egypt, we remind ourselves that just like an egg can fail to develop into a baby chick, so too our deliverance from Egypt is actually incomplete. It's incomplete until we get that final redemption, until we have Israel as Israel should be, the land of Israel where we're all called into. And again, our incomplete redemption that we have to remember is a form of gevura, it's a form of holding back and that connection. Now, I think there are times we just take these things for granted without looking at the other ideas. So I want to again think of another idea about the whole concept of the order of Seder. And Seder, of course, means order and putting order into our lives. Sometimes I think we challenge ourselves with our emunah. We're told to have complete faith that Hashem is in control of everything. And when we look at the world, as we do now, it's chaos. There are things going on in the world that we cannot understand, but we're not necessarily meant to understand them. We have to have complete faith in what is going on and that there is a plan behind what is going on. I was talking to someone last night at a shiva, and talking to someone, not one of the Avadim, I was talking to someone else in the shiva house, and they were talking about the number of occasions where, unfortunately, at the moment, we have a number of young children have passed away in very tragic circumstances. And this person said to me, I think the people who cope with it best are those who are really full of emunah, are full of faith. And it's certainly a thing that I've seen in hospitals, where people are full of faith who don't worry about being in control, who know that there is a divine plan, are able to cope with these things far better. There's a story of a tzaddik, famous tzaddik, Rabbi Meir of Grosnin. And when he was a young man, he was learning in a Beis Medrash, as people do. And then quite late in the morning, a fairly simple-looking Jew walked in off the street, peasant. And this person turned to Rabbi Chil and said, Rabbi Yid, do you have a talisman to fit in that I could use? I need a talisman to fit in. Now, Hilme's to fit in had been passed down from previous tzaddikim. And they were, as far as he's concerned, something very holy and something very special. And he wasn't accustomed to lending them to anyone. You had to fit in it your own. And I think many of us don't lend them out to other people. But despite his reservations, despite his concerns, he decided, yeah, I can lend my talisman to fit in to this poor man. And the man put them on. Rabbi Hilmer tried to focus on his learning. You know, when there's someone else in the room, you often look at them, you pay attention to them, you don't always focus on what you're doing. And the peasant started just walking around the shul. It didn't look as though he was davening at all. It just looked as though he was going for a wander around the shul. And as the minutes ticked by, Rabbi Hill was looking at him thinking, like, what is going on here? This guy wants my talisman to fit in. He's just wandering around looking out of the window, looking here. What is going on? And he became more and more concerned, like, why did this man come into shul? Why did he want to borrow my tefillin? Just to do nothing, just to wear them and walk around. Finally, the peasant walked to the window and looked outside. And then he called Rabbi Hilmer over and he said, come and look. So Hilmer went to the window, and the peasant looked out and he said, look, when you look outside, what do you see? And at that stage, the Russian army was conducting exercises outside the window. A general, colonel, major, whatever, probably sergeant major in those days, would be barking orders. And the soldiers were diligently following the command, following the instruction. They were marching in perfect formation. And the peasant said to Rabbi, isn't this beautiful? And if you think, when we watch Changing the Guard, when you watch any of the military precision, sometimes watching troops marching is absolutely phenomenal. They are so orderly. Again, think of the British Army on exercises. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Sweden? Yeah. If you ever go to Sweden and you've seen Changing of the Guard in Sweden, it is the most amazing sight. You say attention, and probably over the next 6 seconds, you'll have a few of them putting their feet together slowly in no form of order. They march, they just don't know how to march in order at all. They're all out of step. It's an interesting thing to see. You go to the Changing of the Guards here, or you go to the troops in front of the Buckingham Palace, you go near them, they will shout at you, say, beware of the King's Guard, or used to be the Queen's Guard, beware of the Guard. There, they'll start chatting to you. They'll start talking to you. They'll ask you if you're having chewing gum for them. They say, oh, can you get me? It's just completely. But the Russian army, as indeed the British army, are completely in order. So the peasant asked Rabbi Hilmer, what do you see? Rabbi Hilmer was like looking at you, Meshuggah. So the man explained to him how remarkable it is that these soldiers were paying such careful attention to the general shouting orders. His every command was being followed. And the simple Jew said, how much longer are we going to do this? When a lovely Russian general shouts an order, his soldiers respond. When a British general shouts an order, the soldiers respond. Hashem gave us the Torah at Har Sinai. It's giving us instructions to follow, telling us what to do. And yet all of us seem to often do the exact opposite. And I think maybe we have to think about that. And we have to think about that, how we're going into Seder. Hashem is there. He's given us the commandment. Indeed, Rabbi Hilmer said that after that, he thought about this talisman to fit in a completely different way. The world requires Seder. The world requires order in order to function. Hashem wants us to follow a specific order. And we need to learn from the soldiers. We need to learn from the people who do this in order. That despite the lowly nature of a Russian general, despite the lowly nature of English generals, people are following their orders. And we have to remember that we have to connect with Hashem and love Hashem, who is so much more powerful, who does know what's going on in the world. And yes, we're told during Seder to think about how we are leaving Egypt. And I think last year, we've been able to think about us being in constraints, about us being in difficulties. It's being shouted to us on virtually every street corner. Go down a road in London, I wouldn't say down a road in Birmingham, we're not brave enough, but go down a road in London and you may well get abuse. Hashem is reminding us that we're in God's. We're being reminded that Seder is a way for us to move forward. Seder is a way for us to connect with Hashem. Seder is a way for us to actually ask the right questions and to realize that Hashem is in charge of the world. We have in Seder past, present, and future. The past is Magid, telling the story. The present is eating the meal. And yes, during the meal, we need to talk about where we are and Hashem's involvement with us. But then we come to the future to realize that in the future, everything will become clear. Yes, we will get to the redemption. We will get to sing Nitzah with the tune, possibly the tune of the Hatikva. Many people do the tunes of the Hatikva, they use it. Because we have to realize that Israel is where we are and where we should be. We have to realize our connection with the land. That is what the Seder is telling us. We have to realize that. We have to feel it. We have to want it. But it's up to us and what we put into our Seder, what we get out of it. If we want to feel the Emunah, we have to work on it. It doesn't just come. We have to work on it. We have to develop it. And then please God, that way we can all collectively say, Shana Haba, Eretz Israel. Next year, we should all, please God, be in Eretz Israel, but a different Eretz Israel. An Eretz Israel where we have the coming of Mashiach and a completely different world, because boy, do we need it.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
It's cold.
Right, I will sign out to those on Zoom. I'll see you all next week. Perhaps